right. Hello, everyone. This is Darren, and we are live here with Luke, still working through ever so slowly the book of Acts, using or being advised by Willie James Jennings in his commentary in the Belief series, which I will hold up here for. Well, anyway, let's see. There we go. In the Belief series. So, hoping to be joined today by Mark and Leonard, and we have a few different things to bring up. Mark has a couple questions he'd like to talk about, and I got a couple quotes I'm interested in. So, we will get right to that. Also, feel free if you're watching along to drop a question in the chat on the comment section in Facebook or comments on YouTube, whatever way you do it, and we'll bring you right into the conversation. So anyway, let us take a look at where we've been with this text with Jennings. Maybe maybe a way to build up to this while we're waiting for some other folks to jump on is to go back and look at this idea of the common or the commons that Jennings comes back to in this chapter, but that really he lays out starting I think in the introduction, really, when he talks about the joining together of Jew and Gentile. But let me let me pull this up and see if you can see that. So, in the introduction to the book, and if you we may have talked about it once before, but there are these three main sections about history. And there's a history as creature, history of this joining, and then a history, I think, of desire. But the history we tell. Let me. I'll get rid of this. There we go. History we tell. Jew and Gentile joined, and let me just jump here. So let's look at this. Is the disciples of Jesus do not betray an identity, but a destiny. Not a history, but how the story of my people will be used to dictate to me a future and plan my life projects. The imperial project of the Roman Empire also dies in the body of the disciple who has joined her or his body to the risen Savior Jesus. The spirit is crumbling imperial design from within by destroying the divide between those enslaved and their masters. The hierarchies nurtured so carefully by the Roman Empire are being undone by the Spirit. Who will not release slave or free, Jew or Gentile, to their own self-interpretations, but who will relentlessly prod them to open themselves toward one another in a life that builds the common? So the Spirit, who will not release slave or free, Jew or Gentile, to their own self-interpretations, but who will relentlessly prod them to open themselves toward one another in a life that builds the common. Now, in the spirit, the common is not the bottom, not the despised humble beginning, and not the launching pad into social and economic hierarchies. It is the goal of life together in God. That is pretty somewhat complicated. But I think part of what's being said here is that there is a way to understand what the Spirit is doing here, where it doesn't fit into the neat categories of either the empire or the traditions that people have been brought up with, because it doesn't seek to establish hierarchies, and it doesn't seek to establish just a flat individualism where everybody gets to decide who and what they want to be without regard to the common being drawn together. I think about this launching pad into the social and economic hierarchies. There's a lot of thoughts going through my head right now, but I think that there's ways to look at this, thinking about the way that national identities, the way that certain cultural identities can be used to bring people together. Where you might pool your resources or join together just to create another group of elites that represent maybe a different cultural or different national background, but that is not joined in the common struggle to bring about what the Spirit is trying to bring about here. I know that wasn't as clear as it could be, and I apologize for that. But maybe if we go on here, the common is the condition of joined life where the haves and have-nots are bound together in clear sight of one another and in shared support. The common is the redistribution of life where the Spirit invites us to a sharing of space and place, resources and dreams. The common takes from empire its designs for building a world and from diaspora its plans for surviving it. Instead, the common joins, weaving together purpose and hope in the life of discipleship to Jesus. And I could go on there, but I see Leonard's here, so I'll give you all a break from my voice here.
Yeah,
hey, Leonard, how are you doing?
Oh, just on overload. Just left another call about pharmacy.
Yeah, I saw. I've been seeing some of your posts. You got all kinds of things going on, don't you?
Yeah. Another meeting this weekend. So.
Yeah.
But I saw Mark's questions that I found very interesting.
Yeah, and I was trying to go back to some of this stuff about the commons from earlier in the book to talk about this, to get prepared for his question about the intensification of the common there in that second question. But while we were waiting for him, I thought it would be interesting to get some of that in.
Yeah.
But yeah. And unfortunately, Marcy's a little under the weather, so we'll miss her this evening.
Yeah, because these viruses.
She might try to jump in on the Facebook. Huh?
Yeah. These viruses, COVID has done something. It's gotten them all crazy. I mean, everything is just acting different.
Yeah, it's yeah, we're not out of the woods yet, unfortunately. You know, there's a lot of weirdness going on. That's for sure. Yeah, and it makes, I guess, this is where I mean, this is kind of thinking about these questions that Mark asked and thinking about some of this, and just thinking about my own church situation, and the community that we're in. You know, obviously there's a lot of big things that need to be done, a lot of big changes that need to be made, um, you know, um, on a national, international scale. But I think part of what this looking at this Acts text is speaking to me about is, how do we begin to form, you know, community wherever we are in a way that might begin to address people's needs when the state, or the nation is not going to pick it up until we fight to make them do it. There's an interim period, where we have to kind of take care of each other, you know, um, until the resources are a little more available to help us do that.
Well, when that first question when he talks about the intimacy and how we need
Hmm.
to connect with one another, uh, I'm of the opinion that even as family, we are not intimate
Right.
anymore.
Yep.
Uh, it was required. Uh, to me, a meal is the most intimate thing you
Right.
can have. When you sit down
Hmm.
and break bread with somebody, that's
Right.
the most intimate thing you can do.
Right.
And because we don't do that, things that could even be more intimate, and we adults like sex, it's not
Hmm.
intimate anymore because we don't know what intimacy is.
Right.
When you can go off to your room and eat your meal by yourself and not sit at that table and
Right.
have that conversation. And I had lost that too. I mean, it's just my wife and I in this great big house, and
Yeah.
we just made a decision that we would sit at this real nice dining room table that this company didn't bill us for, and at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how the conversation goes, and you
Yeah.
connect and see. That's why, if you ever notice, even with the church, when they
Yeah.
have a meal, people show up.
Hmm.
And
Right.
oh, you were over at Union when I was there, and the guy started about the dinner church.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the thing we forget so much about communion, in that it wasn't just going up there, picking off a piece of bread, putting it in the cup, and eating it.
Right.
It was a meal.
Yep.
It was a
Yep.
meal. And
Yeah.
that's what I know with COVID it's hard, because
Hmm.
I don't like to eat in a room or restaurant with a lot of
Right.
people. uh
Yeah.
I prefer going outside if I can find a restaurant that
Right.
has outside seating. But it's the little things like that that we need to do to open up and bring about this intimacy. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna say this, and I'm gonna let you talk. But I
No.
had at the first church I was at, Slady was the financial secretary, and she ended up serving like 37 years, and I
Oh,
think I
wow.
got there in like year 30, and I
Wow.
went to her house and had a meal with her,
Mm.
and she told me, and this is an officer of the church. I was
Hmm.
first pastor that come and sit at her table,
Right. Yeah.
and it meant so much to her. And as we I'm not saying every pastor can go at eat
Right.
everybody's house, but the
Yeah.
thing is, you need to be known as a person who will be intimate. And
Right.
even if it's just the meal at the church where You don't sit
Right.
at the same table all the time, or like some places I go, they got the king's table where the pastor and a few of his special folks sit there. But
Oh
just
boy.
move
Yeah.
around and be with people and
Right.
engage with this intimacy, which carries intimacy to a greater
Yeah.
unit and more
Yeah.
close connects us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was yeah, I think you're right. COVID has really messed with that a lot. And there was there's a church across the street from us that's been they've been very hesitant about coming back, and they've been coming back little by little, um, and they had a big memorial service today for a woman who kind of died in a car accident. So she was a little bit younger, and you get a lot of people usually come out for those services. And I was sitting in my office. They came into our building to use our fellowship hall because they don't have a big place to meet, for the reception. And I just heard a lot of people as they were going by talking about, this was the first time they were back in church and how good it feels to be, with everybody, and just, even in a sad occasion, the ability to be, like you're saying, to be with one another, to sit down, even if it's only fruit and finger foods, to eat a little bit together. Yeah, no, I think I'm really convinced that, I think we've missed something about how the thing that Jesus leaves his disciples as a practice more than anything is that they sit down at meal together. You know, that's the practice that is passed on. That I'm present when you sit down and break bread together.
I mean, and that's the last thing in the Gospel of John.
Right,
They're out there fishing,
right,
and he says, "Bring some fish," and they have
right,
a meal.
right.
You know?
Well, and Luke as well with the road to Emmaus story, that
Right.
comes, it's just, yeah, just on and on, I think and obviously, clearly when churches got bigger and bigger, it was, it was harder to keep having meals together. And it was easier just to kind of drop a little piece of bread on folks. But yeah, I remember I took a class on, when I went back to do my THM, with Dr. Blunt as my advisor, but I did another class with one of the with Dr. Galbraith, who was like one of the worship and practical theology people. But we did a whole thing on the Eucharist and on communion, and talking about just the way that it's kind of been lost. Some of the importance of it has been lost. Some of the importance of the way we read scripture, of all the stories, about sitting at food, about eating food together. Yeah, I think there's something to that. There's really something to that. And I think we learned sharing in general by learning to share food together. We learned a little bit more about sharing, more broadly. Yeah. Let's see.
And then when there's the one with all the questions that
I was sorry, I was struggling with some technology tonight.
Oh,
Yeah.
did I handle that one for you good enough, Mark?
Huh?
Did I handle that?
Oh, no, I missed it. I just
Okay.
joined in. I missed. What were y'all talking about?
No, we were talking about your first question about the intimacy, and I say we
Okay.
lost that because we don't even have a meal together. And to me, a meal is the most intimate thing you can do with a person.
For sure.
And because we've lost that, we've lost intimacy with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the reason why I brought that up, before the pandemic, people were struggling with the fact that I always said that despite all this technology, I'd never seen a bunch more folks that felt more isolated and alone in a long time. And I think despite technology, I think people still struggle with finding some sense of camaraderie of folk, some sense of community. I think folks are I think a lot of folks are struggling really bad.
Yeah.
So you go on Facebook, you got 1,000 Facebook friends or 1,000,000 Instagram friends, but a lot of folks don't have nobody they can call and say, hey, can I bounce this off you, or hey, can we go out and grab a bite to eat so we can talk for a little bit? I'd really like to get out. I think a lot of folks really struggle with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and some people are just, I think it's hard. It's hard when there's so many people are just in need, just in general, like, because when you feel awkward in your first conversation is, trying to get some actual help, for survival, I mean, when you don't only just need friendship, you need like, some help.
So
I mean, like, with whatever, yeah, I mean, I think this is a big question that you're asking. And I think it's something that, like you're saying, before the pandemic, I think that the way technology, the way that, well, even though, to a certain extent, the way that many people's work is going, and the way that, so many things are just keeping people very isolated and very, and the interactions you have on social media obviously are not intimate ones. They're
and I really feel bad, especially for folks who are seniors who, I mean, for a lot of seniors, the church, the synagogue, what have you, was a place where they could find some camaraderie to build some relationships. Right. And then when the pandemic hit, boom, that rug got swept out from under them. And some are still a little skittish of coming back because of the virus, what have you. But I mean, I think that's a real problem area. I think senior citizens.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's real funny. I've been meeting people that I've been on Zoom with for 2 years, and everybody, when I walk in, they said, "Well, I figured out you'd be this little short guy." 6'5", you're totally different. And I mean, even with the pharmacy people, we're just sitting there talking, because this one guy, I just saw him, this big impressive guy, and he was maybe about 5'2", but that didn't, after I got over the shock of seeing him, we were okay. Right. But it just, I don't know. I mean, we're looking at each other now, but so the spirits don't connect on this.
Right.
Yeah, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's not the same as me shaking your hand, or giving you a hug, or like you said, I heard you talk about sitting down sharing a meal together. It's just not the same. So I think there's a real struggle to build those bonds of intimacy.
Right.
Yeah. It's a struggle to do.
Well, and I think this, from the text too, the part that you bring out, I mean, the key and the importance he's talking about here is that, this boldness that they have, that we've been trying to figure out how to bring out of ourselves and bring out of our congregations, he's saying that boldness is born of this intimacy.
Right. It's born of connection.
Right. It's it's not just something that they will up out of their, out of themselves, or, out of their whatever. It's he said it's a boldness is always a together boldness, a joined boldness, a boldness born of intimacy.
Right. And that's probably true of most movements. Certainly the civil rights movement, where folks were together. I mean, going back, I was thinking about my days at UVA when Black students at UVA were struggling with various issues, and a lot of us that were part of this we were really, really close. We were good friends,
Right.
so our friendship helped to, helped us to spurred our courage to speak out on various issues.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that is very critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I just read a little bit more of this as it goes on. I'll show.
Okay.
So this is the part you were talking about here. Is this
Pull it up.
Of course, at each disciple can and must be bold there, but their boldness is always a together boldness, a joint boldness, a boldness born of intimacy. The modern lie of individualism is most powerful when we imagine that boldness comes from within. It does not. It comes from without, from the Spirit of God. The disciples gathered together to ask for what comes from without. Now, Lord, look at their threats and grant to your servants to speak your word with all boldness.
Yeah.
They see the threat, they pray, and they ask for boldness. This moment sets the template for the movement, for any movement that is of Jesus. And then he goes on talking about the civil rights movement.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, again, to the importance of worship, in that, that worship, whether it be formal worship, whether it be small group Bible study, prayer, how that builds bonds. The Spirit brings us together and develops our sense of kinship, and gives us a common sense of purpose.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think I think that when, that, I think that we miss how much that, even the singing together, that, I mean, again, you go back to the civil rights movement, you go back to other things, that to having meetings, but having meetings that are filled with, begin and end with song, begin and end with, joining together in that way, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
being a teenager and experiencing that, I know what you mean, because I was right there, junior and senior in high school when all that was going on, and we would go to a church, Third Bethel AME, Fifth Street Baptist, when it was downtown, and most of it would be singing, and then the speaker would come in, and the spirits were already high when the speaker got there. So, I could have gotten up there and had everybody shout.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think for I know for some of us in, the white mainline church, we've been afraid to some degree of the emotionality, or the, or that kind of, that lifting of the spirits in that way, and the charging people up. Like we've been afraid of that, and to some degree, we just go for, I don't know what we've been going for, but I mean, it's interesting because I think that, we miss out on what it is that actually joins people together, what brings people together. When you spend all your time trying to bring people together based on your intellectual reflection,
right,
on a topic, on a concept or a topic, it creates a certain kind of togetherness that's exclusionary. Really, it's chauvinistic, or whatever. I mean, it's not inviting, it's not welcoming. It's a different thing. And
I think this is where Hellenistic or Greek thinking hurts us, because it creates that dichotomy, flesh versus spirit. And I always felt when I was an undergraduate, I think I wrote when I did my final exam in one of my Greek classes, the professor of the classical studies department dogged me because I made that statement, how this dichotomy, I think, hurts us. you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he ripped me apart. But I said that's how I feel. I think this dichotomy is one of this dichotomy of that we're not joined spirit and body, this flesh versus spirit. I think that can be very, very harmful.
Yeah.
Darren, did you ever hear Katie Geneva Cannon's comment on that type of worship?
Uh-uh.
Yeah,
Well, I
she called
maybe, but I don't remember it.
she called it the chosen frozen.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Exactly. Exactly.
she was ordained. She was ordained
Yeah, yeah,
into that
yeah.
denomination.
Right. No,
That's
exactly.
how she classified. But that's the thing, and that's where I try to get in the Black tradition that realizes there has to be this combination of mind and heart.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
can't be
Right.
all mind. It can't be all spirit.
Right.
And like I said, God didn't take the time to create this brain and then put this software called the mind in there for us to just park it when it
Right.
comes to worship. And
Yeah.
then when Mark, you talk about the dichotomy, I say that's why we so bipolar, because we live in one world on Sunday morning and in another world the rest of the week. And
Oh boy, you're gonna get me in trouble
and
because
and and that other world takes over because 2 hours,
oh,
1 hour cannot defeat that.
yeah,
Right.
and you're
Right.
right.
Because
And the reason why I say going to get me in trouble, um, Candace Benball, she wrote the book Red Lip Theology. She did
Mm-hmm.
I guess, an exposition on Beyonce's song "Church Girl," and she's talked about, and I think she raised some really, really good points that we are not just both and sexual and sacred. That we are joined together. We are sexual beings and we are sacred beings, and both are. It's not both and I told her I would push that a little bit further because to me I think it's the central that we need to really get back to, because I think that's one of the roots of the climate change problem, that if you cannot love what you're not connected to. I think one of our problems with climate is that we are not connected. We don't smell the flowers. We don't put our feet in the sand. We don't taste the wine. We don't taste the
Right.
food and appreciate it and take it in. We don't, like I said, we don't feel the color of the light. That's sensuality. That's something we need to recover. If we do that, I think that we'd be a step to dealing with this whole climate change thing. So we would connect to the creation. We're not connected to the creation. So I push her argument a little bit further, but I'll send you the article. She makes a really, really good point about that article.
it all gets back. It all gets back to language too when you talk about
Yeah.
part, because they will not say that they had sex, but they said they knew somebody. Well, what
Right.
yeah, see, so language is so important, and that's why I like the questions y'all brought up, and I like how Jennings is saying this, because I've gotten people to read that book, Learning to Speak God from Scratch, because we it's just messed up.
Yeah.
The way we
Yeah.
the way we talk theologically and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about total intimacy. I mean, to me, the first place we should be able to talk about intimacy and sexuality is in the walls of the church. But I hate to say it, I think a lot of us have a bad theology when it comes to sexuality. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when I was preaching at my other church, if I said sex, I might well just sit down because they didn't hear anything else I said after that. People just froze up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that it may be and that's part of why I think it's hard for us to talk about intimacy, because I think immediately people take it to a sexual place, which is part of it. but
just a
then they don't
part.
want to talk about it. They don't want
Right.
to talk about it, you know. And then of course, you know, we've been conditioned in so many ways to. I mean, there's just a lot of conditioning all around. I
Yeah.
mean, that we have to, you know, that we have to deal with, and I think that we, like Leonard was saying earlier, we, you know, most people don't know how to be intimate, even sexually,
Right.
first of all. But
Yeah.
then to be intimate not sexually is another problem for people. They only conceive of intimacy
Yep.
as leading to some kind of sexual
And I
act.
think
You know,
because
they don't
yeah.
imagine intimacy in other ways. You
And
know.
I think because intimacy involves risk, involves being vulnerable, and I think
Mm-hmm.
many of us are scared. We're scared of vulnerability. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we don't realize that when we offer ourselves, whether we offer ourselves sexually or we're offering ourselves in terms of sharing a moment, that does involve risk. It involves the risk of rejection. It's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why that Jennings keeps going back to the fact that, you know, this is, they're being drawn to this by the Spirit. You
Right.
know, this doesn't necessarily just come to someone off the top of their heads. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, this is work that you get drawn into, that you, in some ways, you can't you can't escape.
Yeah.
There's a great, I wish
And it
I'm going
means
to try to
to me
find,
that
we'll try to
I
find.
think we need to really revisit pneumatology. We really, really do.
I'm going to see if I can find this quote. You all can
Okay.
talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, what you say, Mark, the intensification of the common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know this. I don't know I don't know what you saw yesterday. My point was about inclusion in my sermon
Yeah.
because we just don't, you know. It's just like with Jesus. All that stuff was on the side of the road, and most of us don't pay any attention to it. And
Nope. Nope.
and
Nope.
and that's why, especially when I'm in the city, I try to walk a lot because I know we'll forget one day I was walking up Lee Street and I had driven Lee Street probably 1,000 times, and I started walking and I noticed the different architecture and all of that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it just got me to appreciate the side of the road.
Yeah.
I guess you know I didn't even use my manuscript most of the time for that sermon yesterday, which I normally do. But and that's where the people are, and you know we've made them invisible for a lot of reasons, but
Right. Right.
we like you say we find all these ways to exclude people.
Yeah.
You know,
To
race, sex,
to
culture.
to to appreciate the size, you got to walk a little slower. You got to be more observant. You can't be distracted by all the noise to really appreciate what's happening on the side of the road. And I think that's part of our problem. We're so distracted by all the noise that empire is throwing at us that we can't appreciate
And then when you
even
speak
the
up, people
beauty
say,
on the side of the road.
yeah.
Because
And
I
then when
think you talk about that there's flowers, there's daffodils growing on the side of the road. You know?
and then when you speak up, people tell you to be quiet.
Yeah.
Right.
So you
I
know
was,
that's yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just saying well, I come back to that. I come back to that quote, but I was just going to say. Now I forgot what I was going to say in response to what you were saying, but I like this when we're talking about the commons in this. there's this quote from earlier talking about chapter 2, and this is kind of what I think it says the space of this common was where life stories, life projects, plans, and purposes were being intercepted by a new orientation. This common is created by the Spirit. How could the things they held dear not be drawn toward the common? This new gathering, this ecclesia, time, talent, and treasures, the trinity of possessions we know so well, would feel the pull of this holy vortex. So I think that sense that the Spirit is drawing these early people together, to say you have to form this community. There's no other way to be together but to form this common life together.
and
And
that the dominant culture may say you're nothing, but the Spirit sees what you bring.
right,
The Spirit sees that, and the Spirit can intensify that and multiply that.
right.
So,
and I think, and I think this is what I was talking about earlier is, how do we form places for people where they feel not only together and able to be vulnerable, but also that they feel like that their needs can be met, in this common space, because that's where you gain the boldness, right? When you know that you can fall back into the community, fall back into the place that will support you and hold you.
And I think one of the keys to that is we have to somehow get across to folks that this area is safe. That whatever you bring, whatever brokenness that you bring, this is a safe place for you to come with whatever you have, whatever broken pieces you have. Bring those broken pieces to this safe space, where the Spirit can touch it and mar it and move it, and so that it becomes a blessing for you and the rest of the community.
Right. Yeah. Good.
And that's why we've got to reinvent the church. We can't go back to what it used to be. It just there's no going back, and it's got to change, and maybe if we can get back to this Acts 4, where people are willing to give up and let go of this position and title and all of this stuff, where I've got to be in charge, because that's the culture of the world. You got to be in charge, and we just again it gets the language and how we say things and how we do.
No, for sure. For sure.
And that's why I say again, one of the most important ministries of the church to me is pastoral care, because and that's not just the job of you, Darren, or you, Leonard. I mean, we have to train our folk to understand that they are part of this process too, of creating this safe space, so that when folks come with their brokenness, whether that be brokenness, when folks come with their church hurt, when folks come with their brokenness from bad relationships or whatever the world throws at them, that it's safe here. You can share here. That all of us are broken, and all of us are working on this path towards healing.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where some people, some of the people in different communities outside of churches, outside of faith groups, have a little maybe a step ahead of us, because I think in the world, especially in kind of movements for whether it's climate or racial justice or whatever these things, I mean, people acknowledge their brokenness, I think, more in social movements than they do in churches now. Churches, you spend maybe your first 10 years acting like you ain't got nothing wrong with you. Once you make your, if of a certain church kind of variety, you do have to, confess your old life and say how bad you were. But, once you get dunked or whatever, you're supposed to be, pure now.
Pure
So
and all right. Yeah.
you gotta live, you gotta pretend like nothing's wrong with you anymore. But, I think that I think in most of the churches I've been in, I think people really, besides health issues, to a large extent or something like that, people really avoid, vulnerability with each other about things, and a lot of sometimes that's just people trying to shoulder things themselves and not wanting to bother anyone, but it's an interesting situation for sure.
All of us got problems. All of us got issues, and we just need to
Right.
be honest about it.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I'm gonna call it a night, and we'll.
All
I don't
right.
know. I don't know if we got any further on the in the chapter. I don't even know. I don't know if we even read anything from chapter 4 today, but those were we might have to circle back to some of those questions,
Okay.
Mark. But
Okay.
yeah, because I think this question, I think this way he uses this word common is really, the commons or this common is something. I think maybe what you were saying, Leonard, maybe this is a way to start thinking about reinventing the church around this idea, of how do we think of ourselves as holding something in common, of being drawn together in a common life by the Spirit, I think what he says is
and getting rid of this idea, because I see it too many times that people come to the church for power because they don't have power anywhere else.
Right.
Rather than for common to be supportive and throw what you have in with everybody else.
Yeah. When you have churches splitting off so that certain people can have power in another place because they can't get power where they,
I always hear Dr. Kenny talk about. He talks about snakeology. He talks about this hierarchy versus mutuality, and that we need to move towards a conception of thinking of mutuality and get out of this hierarchy, which I think is what Jennings is trying to get to when he talks about this idea of the common.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, we'll come back to the intensification of the common next week. All right. Good talking to y'all. Thank you. Thanks for
all right, y'all. Good stuff.
Yeah.